Hello, good morning, welcome. Thanks everyone for coming today to the Catherine G. Murphy Gallery. I'm Nicole Watson, I'm the gallery director, and of course this is Anupama Pasricha, who is here to, we're just going to do an informal kind of brown bag question and answer session. So feel free to eat in here today. We don't normally get to do that in the gallery, but we have moved the artwork out of the way, so feel free to enjoy your lunch or your popcorn. So the other thing I want to let you know is we have rearranged the gallery space so that we can do this in here today. So if you haven't seen the show arranged as it was intended, I encourage you to come back and do that because it is really fun to look around, you know, be able to walk around the pieces all the way and see them from the front and the back. And the show is up about another week. So a week from today is the last day of the show. So if you know someone who hasn't seen it, encourage them to come over and take a look. So the way that this will work is, I'll just give you a little information about Dr. Anu, as I know she's affectionately called here at St. Kate's. And then I'll kind of get our question and answer session going, and so we'll do that for about 15 or 20 minutes, and then we'll give the audience an opportunity to ask questions too. So if you think of things along the way, hang on to those, and I'll let you know when you can ask your questions. So Anu was born in Delhi, India, and has lived in the United States since 2001. She received her Master's Science degree in Textiles and Clothing from the University of Delhi and a Doctor of Philosophy in Family and Consumer Sciences Education from Iowa State University in Ames. She currently chairs the Apparel, Merchandising, and Design Department here at St. Kate's, and under her leadership, student participation in external design competitions has grown significantly. I actually just saw someone won a design competition at the Mall of America, right?
Yes.
Yes?
One of my students, where is she?
There she is, yeah. Congratulations. A lot of your students have had a lot of
But that was
success.
totally her work. I didn't, because I haven't had her in construction class yet. So it was her work totally. But
We'll see what happens in the future then. Anu's previous work has been exhibited at the Textile Center in Minneapolis, the Minnesota State Fair, and the International Textiles and Apparel Association Design Exhibit. The textile panels that are hanging on the wall in this exhibition, Anu actually showed at the Historical Society as part of Beyond Bollywood, an Indian Americans Shaped the Nation, a Smithsonian traveling exhibit at the Historical Society in 2016. Her recent honors include, of course, the 2017 Bonnie Jean Kelly and Joan Kelly Award for Faculty Excellence at St. Catherine University. This distinguished award recognizes outstanding accomplishments in teaching and scholarship that bring external recognition to the university regionally and nationally. So welcome, Anu. Join me in welcoming Anu. We'll wait till we've got a few, as predicted, a few more coming in here. Come on in, there's chairs up front here too if you need them. Plenty of space. These chairs are more comfortable too. Okay, so I'll just kind of get us started here, Anu, and I think maybe it's kind of interesting to just start with the basics. In your artist statement, you talk about how designing this collection of clothing allowed you to rekindle your Indian roots, and I thought it would be interesting if you could tell us a little bit about your upbringing and if that, if that influenced your interest specifically in clothing design and also sustainability, sort of what role your background played in those really important aspects of your work.
okay, so I obviously grew up in India and I moved to United States in 2001. So it's not like 17 years.
Yeah.
I don't even know, 16 years. Yeah. So. Growing up there, there was always scarcity of resources, water, electricity. You had to always think about solutions of your everyday problems. So I grew up with a place where you're waking up at 4 in the morning trying to fill drinking water from the faucet so that the whole day you have the water. So you grow up with the food thinking that in this plate, whatever is there, it has to be eaten. It cannot go wasted. So it's just that whole cultural philosophy of nothing goes to waste, scarce resources are scarce, even if I was part of a middle income group there, middle class income, but these were still the background was there that this is how you live. So this was just part of everything, whatever you do, your You're cutting a fabric, like my mom and my grandma, they all sewed. So if you're cutting a fabric, like what these extra scraps, where are they going to go? So you would not throw anything out in the trash can just like that. So our trashes will not even, they would be cleaned out every day, but they would not even fill up because you would try to use everything, salvage everything. And I also remember, like, even my grandfather would, to make a laundry basket, he like nailed down some logs of wood and put a chain over it. So like it was just part of, I think, how we lived, I guess. Even as I said, like my both parents were in education, so they both were teachers and education officers, but this is how we lived in that social background also. So, and then when I went to college, the most common and the most encouraged field was home economics or home science. At that point I was not interested. I wanted to do like geology, and I was more like, I want to go out, and that was my goal, was to get into geology because I was so fascinated by that science. But then my father pushed me to get into home science. Like, this is the best field for women, you get time for home and everything, so that was kind of like, I think his goal was that I should become a school teacher like them, and then and that's the best field because that way I can come home at by 2-3 p.m. and then I can look after the family well. So I went there because I was kind of forced, and then you listen to your parents. Oh, not anymore, but at that time we used to listen to our parents a lot, okay, I'll do this. So I started, and then in my sophomore year, which we call second year, I took the class called textiles. And that was it, that was a changing moment in my life, that this is so fascinating. I'm just so fascinated by fabrics and learning about them and that like that. And then I was totally into, so my freshman year I was like struggling to get good grades. And then second year onwards, so like when I graduated I was 4th in the university. So it just changed from who I was and because I found my passion right there. So that's where I think kind of. And then when I was doing my home science, so-called, but my concentration was in textiles and clothing. So that's where I started learning hand embroidery skills and all this tie-and-dye skills. So all the handwork, because India is a country where you have a lot of handwork still goes on, because it's the artisan base is strong, and they live in villages, and they need that sustaining, to sustain themselves, they need to get those crafts. Although they are dying, slowly, but we try to revive, the government tries to revive, the designers are trying to help revive that industry, because those individuals, they have nothing else, they don't know anything else, they have not gone through school. So this is the skill they have in their hand, which if they don't teach to their children, because there is better opportunity of working in technology, doing other things, then the skill is going to die, and we will not be able to see this fine work of the hand that we have seen in the past. And we do have seen the deterioration of the quality of work, because you do require a lot of patience, a lot of skill in making those things. So that's kind of like, I've learned making these embroideries by hand, so I can actually make any of these things by hand, because I've learned every traditional embroidery of India by hand when I was going to school. And then we would go to these local crafts fairs where we would actually sit with the artisan and look at the stitches, how they are doing it. And even one time we brought an artisan to class to teach us how to do those things, because that was possible. So I think does that kind of answer your question?
Absolutely. So the work you did in this show was for a sabbatical you took, in 2016? 2016? Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at.
Right, now I was looking at that too. And had you done an entire collection like this before?
So the only time I did an entire collection before was when I did my master's in textiles and clothing. And also it wasn't like a very cohesive collection at that point. I think we were still not doing like a fashion show or anything yet. That was the first group of master's class in Delhi. So we were like that first group, and we had not yet established like there'd be a fashion show or something like that. So it was like trying to build those special skills of constructing certain kinds of garments. They were not necessarily very cohesive with each other. So it wasn't a collection like this, it did not walk around with like this one kind of did. And then after that I started my teaching job right after graduation. So when I finished my master's in May, and I was already teaching in July, I was already into the teaching job. So there was always like family, and so I did sew for my kids all the time, right from, I also remember making like a small booty for my firstborn, my 2 daughters. So I also sewed like, matching shoes for her outfit. But then as they grew for their prom dresses, so I sewed for them. I never got an opportunity to sew for myself because I was either teaching full time or doing my PhD and other things, so there was always time was an issue all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a collection where I think I have planned it in a way, although some of the models wore it, that I can wear all of these, except that one also I can wear, my prana design I can wear without, not in that style because my body's not like that. But when I designed it, I wanted to wear it over a white blouse or something so that it can be paired in a way that I can wear it with my body type. So these styles have enough style ease in them that more than one kind of body can actually wear them and still look good. So that's how it's part of making sure that you don't have to be a perfect this body type to wear fashions. You could be any body type and enjoy the fashion. So try to they're not already fitted, so they all have that kind of ease, which we call style ease in technical terms.
Yeah, I like that message of inclusivity with your work that way. And so kind of going back to the cohesiveness of this collection, a lot of times, so we've had a lot of students come in and look at this show and they notice that oh, I see that fabric in this piece and this piece and this piece. And we talk about how they work together so well as a collection, but that's really driven by wanting to use remnants, right? And wanting to make sure you're using up the materials that you've selected, right?
So the pieces that are on the panel are kind of, so those are not remnants, right? So the pieces, those are not
we're
remnants.
talking about things we were seeing in
Right.
the individual
Right.
styles.
So individual, all the color that you see, those are all remnants. Handwork you see is all hand embroidery. And the solids you see, like this blue or that blue, those are all GOT certified organic fabrics.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a mixture of the remnants that I have, and those remnants are from my old saris, so they don't have the integrity to be constructed in a full garment without kind of support, because these fabrics are designed in a way to be draped and not be fitted or sewn together, so they need some kind of support. So the GOT certified organic pieces kind of build that structural look and also support. So each of these fabrics have an underlying fabric which is supporting this fabric. So there's an organic cotton inside the silk which is sewn together, both are sewn together as one, because otherwise that fabric cannot hold itself because it was a sari fabric.
Mm-hmm.
And these saris were with me since I got married, so like 25, 26 years ago. So, and I have not worn them in the last 15, 20 years, so that was where I thought these are close to who I am, these are part of my trousseau, my collection, and I don't want to give them away, don't want to let them go. So if I'm not using them, then how I want to make them something out of it that I can actually wear and get connected back to the fabrics that make me the woman that I am and the mother that I am. So it was very hard to cut, cutting a sari is like a crime for me, like cutting a silk sari is a crime. Like, how can you cut this fabric? But it took a lot of courage to go there and do it, because it was like, okay, I have to do it, because otherwise they're just going to sit there. And eventually, if I'm not even back in India, like some insect will attack the silks, can be attacked by moth. So something will happen to them, like how much I can air them every few years, or, knowing textiles, I'm trying to take care of them, but still. So that was the part of, bringing those. And then I brought several of the ones that I knew that I'm not going to use anymore, for either the reason because of their color, their style, or whatever be the reason, or my social life here when I want to wear sari, whether it will be useful or not. And then if there was some stain or something, like there were different reasons that I picked up that cannot be worn. And then I started putting them together to see now where is the cohesiveness coming here. These are the fabrics I have. So then I had to again pick and choose that this is what I'm going to use, and now that is how it's going to lay out. And so I haven't used everything that I brought back, so there is more to think for the next collection whenever that will happen. But so hopefully I think I did okay in making them cohesive.
Yeah, I know, it's very cohesive, I think it's very cohesive. You sort of alluded to your process a little bit. Can you sort of back it up, and for those of us who don't work in your art form, kind of step by step tell us, how you start thinking about a design, and then sort of the process step by step of where you start and where you end up?
Okay, so there could be a variety of ways one can think of design. You can start from having a wide array of what do you call it, stimulation, inspiration. But for me, the biggest piece was that it has to be sustainable. So that was kind of like, that was one factor that had to be there in my collection. So I knew so when I put my sabbatical proposal, that was like, I'm going to be following sustainability. These are some of the strategies I'll be thinking about. I made a list, but I wasn't yet sure where I'll be going because, I think all the faculty and students can tell too, like there's no time to do anything, until the sabbatical actually happens, and then you have the time to think through it. But then I did think through that these are the strategies that are important and doable within my context. So then, in the meantime, Minnesota Historical Society contacted me, and then because they were getting the Beyond Bollywood exhibit from Smithsonian, so then they asked me, can you do a fashion show for us, which kind of goes well with this exhibit that's coming in. So they invited me, and I said, okay, I'm doing my sabbatical, so now I have to just add another factor that it has to be cohesive with the Beyond Bollywood, so that basically entailed that it has to be something related to India. So that was kind of like a aha moment for me, like I want to jump in, and I want to do this because it connects to my roots there. I can go back and bring that influence, and I was anyway seeing a lot of global, like Indian influence in American fashion anyway. So that's where, going to just picking up fabrics from India, whether even if it's global organic standard, it still has been purchased from India. So every fabric is from India. So that was, so that's where I did the show in May of 2016. So I did that show in one of the evenings when the exhibit was on. And I think, so then it was like, okay, now I have to, these are my fabrics, this is my sustainability pieces that I have to make sure. So then I traveled to India because it was sabbatical. I can go and visit home, family. Travel India, travel a little bit around, and then I started picking up my inspiration around like what is speaking to me. So then again I went into my closet because that's where I had all this color everything was, looking at my closet, pulled out every sari that I had, and then started spreading it like, So, and then I also tried to search for the global organic standard. In fact, that I had done even before leaving from here, but then I knew that the way I'm going there, so I don't need to get it shipped here, why to spend on that, and use that carbon footprint of shipping that fabric there when I want to be there, so I want to bring it with me. So, and then I had to go with what they had in stock, because when you order a fabric from a company, unless you have like 100, 200 minimum, that's kind of a very small minimum. It could be thousands of yards of fabric. You cannot have something to your, what you want or what the colors you want. So you have to pick from what do they have in stock. So then they would send out, this is what we have. So I had to pick up like what will work in my collection from the color perspective, texture perspective. So I had to pick and choose that this is going to work well, and that's what I want to order for my fabric so that can work well with my service. So again, that was another limiting factor, that these are the only fabrics I have to choose from. And then again, I did order more than what I needed, that I won't waste them. But at the same time, because I did not know when they come, how will they look like, and how will they feel like. So from the selection that I had, I picked up about 6 or 7 different fabrics, and then kind of estimated the yardage I would need, and this is what I need. And then they were shipped to my Indian address, and then so when I came back, I brought them back with me. And then they were all bundled up together, and then that's how we started picking up. In fact, I have this print I have in 2 other colors that did not work well with my collection color. So I do have that organic fabric that I can eventually do something else, make a blouse, and I've been thinking about it, like what blouse styles will work with that, and looking forward to find that time to do it, because I'm already like thinking what I can make, which will look good and work well. So then so my fabrics were all defined now, and then I started sketching. So, and a lot of times students here, we tell them you can sketch first and then start hunting your fabric. I always like the other way around. These are my fabrics and now you sketch based on these fabrics. But everybody has an individual process. I think I always okay. But so I started sketching, and then when I was sketching, I asked my daughters, would you like to model one of my dresses? Should I make one for you? And then one of them was more enthusiastic than the other. So it's just like,
How old are your daughters?
25 and 22. So my, so then, and kind of the fabrics I was picking, my younger one is not so much traditionalist. She's more modern, upbeat. So she wasn't thinking about it, but then I did run it like, this is what I'm sketching. And then she was kind of discarding, she's my fashion police also. But then my owners are like, oh mom, can you make some, so we kind of sat together to decide these are my fabrics, and then she said, oh, I would want something like this. So I sketched for her. So actually the dress which is outside, that's the dress for her, and then kind of goes back and forth of, this is what I want. So I sketched more than what I made, and then eventually we shortlisted that these are the ones I'll make, because I wanted to have kind of different kinds of elements and give a variety. It's not should not be boring, dress. I was trying to have a variety just for the sake of making different things using these pure fabrics. So there were like different reasons to having that variety into not only variety in the visual, the aesthetic, but also variety in terms of like, will these fabrics work with this? And just like an experiment to, what will work well and what will not work well. So that was kind of part of my sketching, and then started doing after the sketching a little bit of detail of artwork. This artwork will go here. Although I did not do good documentation of my embroidery work, because I think I see that as part of preparing the fabric itself, and I regret that I should have also drawn and documented that very well. But my sketches are still very rough. They are not like professional sketches because I'm not an illustrator, which is my kind of bucket list, that I want to go through that Pat's art and technology class and then fashion illustration class from Japan. But I don't know when will I be able to do that, because I never learned, in school I never learned Illustrator. At that time it was not there. So we did learn hand sketching, but I wasn't as good at it. So that was not part of my strength area. My faces look so bad, so I don't draw faces. But then my sketches are like readable enough that you can read them and see what they are, and kind of get the idea. So in this lookbook, because that was part of the sabbatical, so I did prepare a lookbook which was also kind of fun to have. So I do have my sketches, and I think some of them have my sketches the way they were in my sketchbook are here. So I think that's where, and then besides doing that collection, then I added 2 new pieces to it. So then again, based on the sari I embroidered this past summer, and that vest piece I also did this summer. So those was again trying to have what I have in my closet, and then also make it connecting to this collection. So I'm just trying to pull that.
I just want to point out, since you mentioned it, your hand embroidery, which I think is particularly extraordinary. It's in this piece. What was the title? Ujjayi. This one's Ujjayi?
Ujjayi, yeah.
And the prana vest.
And then the sari.
And then the sari.
And then all of them have some accents, some embroidery, like the jacket, the dress outside has on the collar, this one has on the back sash here, if you can see the red stitches on here. The suit also has on the pockets. So like a little bit of accents in every piece, but some pieces are focused on that. That's the emphasis in that design of the embroidery.
Can you share with us how many hours approximately like you had? Because the embroidery is incredible.
It's endless. I don't even know. I haven't counted. I don't know. I don't know what
I know we were talking about like probably around between 50 and 100 hours per piece, probably, right?
Exactly, for the embroidery.
For the embroidery?
Especially these 2 embroideries. The running stitch doesn't take that long, so I would say this one took about 7-8 hours. This is just doing 2 sashes. And then that sari took long because I had to applique those ikat pieces, the stripes that you see in the embroidery. So that took at least 2 weeks of spending 4 to 6 hours every day. So it took a lot of time, yes. But it's always fun. it's like you don't get bored. I watch Netflix with it. So it's like little my phone screen going here, because wherever I sit, I take my phone with me, and then it's leaning towards my book or something, and then it's standing up there. So I watch shows that I don't have to really watch. I can listen to. So I do that, and sometimes I also listen to podcasts while I'm doing this work. So it's pretty. It doesn't feel that it's taken that much time, so I don't care. It seems like a good constructive work that also releases my stresses. So I think it's more therapeutic than anything else. And in the end, you have a beautiful product at the end. So it's like rewarding all throughout. So yeah, but you do need patience for it. Everybody doesn't feel comfortable that way, I guess.
Right. Have you taught your daughters this stuff?
No. So
what do your parents think of that, or what would they think of that?
I don't know, because I think, so I never forced my daughters to do anything. So it's just part of, and I think the life they've had so they came to US when my older one was 10, younger one was 6. So it's like, being an, immigrant to a country, they've gone through so many stresses that we came to California, from California moving to Minnesota, like all those changes in life, and also mom is studying, so I never had really time to sit with them and and then there were so many other pressures, like you have to go into the soccer team, you have to do debate, you have to do debate, and then you have to learn Hindi language, because so when we came here, we wanted to make sure that they learn the language. And I think so we continued, we did it in California, and over here also there's an Indian school that runs in Como High School on the weekend. So we tried to, so how many pressures you can put, and then, if they see me and they like it, they want to do it, yes. So I know that my older one has done one of our Halloween costumes herself. It was all hand sewing, but overall, I haven't pushed or forced anything, and so I think, I don't know. That's not the best answer, I guess. But that's where it is, It's
Sure.
like if they want to do it, they
You
do
sound
it.
like a normal parent to
Yeah.
me, which is great, because you seem superhuman in so many other ways.
But I do feel that and also there was a time when in the years we moved here, that there were like 3 years when my husband was back in India and we were here. So I was trying to be the mom and the dad and everything. So I don't think I ever had that free time with them to really explore these. We've done little craft work when they were little, like, do this like painting on paper and things like that. So they do have some art pieces that I have that, because we started there when they were little kids. And I even taught at one of the classes at Indian Temple in California, where I taught little kids about doing some handwork with painting. But then, so.
I was listening to you talk about your process and thinking even so far about like your carbon footprint and when you travel and how that impacts like this measure of sustainability with your work. I know that's something that you've really brought to this program at SAP. It's like this really deliberate thinking about sustainability and design. How do you incorporate that into classroom, into curriculum? What kinds of things do you do with your students to get them really to get their heads around that?
I have several of my students here, so I think maybe they can also share, I don't know, my enthusiasm if they share, if they don't share, I don't know. But I think at this point, we feel that in the department, we have pretty much normalized sustainability, something that they all think through, because in every class they are getting one aspect of sustainability. And I brought all these books here because in many of the classes we use some of it, but then this is one of is like a required textbook in our classes. This was the first version, which came in 2008, and it says Sustainable Fashion, Why Now? And now we've moved on to the next edition, which says Sustainable Fashion, What Next? So we are already in the field, we are thinking about sustainable fashion. And so chapters from this book kind of covers the entire supply chain of, fashion from the fiber to the consumer. So they read this book throughout the 4 years, so the chapters are spread, you'll read chapter 1 and 2 in this or whatever, they're not in linear order. It's based on the course content. So they read through that, and then they read through additional, readings that we post or things we share. And a lot of times for design students will go through the designers, and if you look at like all these books, they're always there in my office or some, And so depending on how advanced the course is, then it'll be more than this, So they'll be getting more exposure to what can be done and what should be done. And we touch base on every aspect of sustainability, which is not just the environmental, but the social sustainability as well. So looking about, what is fair trade, what is fair condition, what is fair wage and things like that. And what about the community development? What about the artisan themselves or the person who's making your clothes? So talking about themselves also. And there's this another book which I really like. It's a fun read. I don't know how many of you have read it. But it's not a required book. It's more like a leisure time reading book. And I think talks about how we dress in US specifically. So I think it's a good read to understand the sustainability issues within the industry, because fashion industry is the second most polluting industry. It's got the most child labor, and you have heard a lot of issues within the fashion industry. And when I'm talking about fashion industry, not only apparel, but also things about the diamonds and things about all other things that come with the accessories, leather industry. It's so polluting and it's so hard on people who are actually working in that industry, whether they are in the field or in the factory. So I think we try to incorporate that in all the classes that we teach here. And it's part of our objectives, course objectives in every course. I think most of the courses, I don't teach all the courses, but I think as a department we all believe in it. So even if somebody is not added, there's still something going on that they will talk about sustainability. But our goal is to make sure that every course has a defined objective which incorporates sustainability. It's part of our hiring too. So if we are hiring a new faculty, that's one of the criteria. We also that they should have that some kind of commitment to sustainability also. It's part of our, I would say we see the social justice piece of our university as kind of tied in very closely to the social sustainability piece of our program and the department. So it's kind of embedded into our department mission. It's embedded down to the fine tune of course objectives and then specific assignments. So it's woven very well throughout. And 8 years ago, I could not say that every student is thinking through it, but I think now I feel that students outside the classroom also, if they are doing some club-related activity or they are doing, so I see them thinking through that lens, doing an activity which they feel that has some sustainability aspect. So they're already talking and thinking about it. So it seems like for them it's like just any other normal educational value that they have here. So that I feel good about that at least, and I'm proud of my students.
Okay, I have one more question and then I'll open it up a little bit. But do you have a favorite piece?
Well, I was thinking a lot about that question. It's so hard. So I thought about each piece is like so dear and near to my heart. But I definitely feel that the piece that I made for my daughter, just because she values it, I think, and it gives her happiness that her mom made it and she loves it, and she kind of believes in my philosophy way more than any of the other family member. So I think that's also makes it most favorite.
And that's the denim
The
piece
denim
out,
piece outside.
as you walk
It's
in.
an organic
out
denim.
Title
So that's where, so when she buys me gifts, they're all sustainable. She's the only one who thinks through that if mom needs a gift, birthday gift or anything, it has to be sustainable. So she really goes out of the way to find sustainable and all things like artisan pieces. So she really goes out of the way to do that. So I think, so she understands. It's not that I'm not at the point where I refuse other gifts, but I think because I don't want to be rude or anything, but whenever my other daughter would ask me, or my husband was like, oh, what do you want? Your birthday's coming, anniversary, blah blah blah. So I keep talking about look for this and think about this and blah blah blah. So I think eventually it'll come to if I have to buy something, I have to buy myself. I'm not a shopper at all, so that's another part of me, which is against being a fashion professor. It's I don't shop, so I try to repurpose and kind of restyle the same clothes that I have. So, but when they go with me shopping and then kind of push me, oh, you need this, and sometimes they're successful. So.
Any questions for Anu from the audience? Oh, good. We're here again?
So how did you come up with the Hindu words and then connecting them with the different pieces?
Great question. So I think so when I was thinking the name of my collection, and just kind of understanding what's the vibe in this collection. So that's where, and I'm not practicing yoga, so that's something that I'm aspiring to. So my goal is in this coming year, because I want to start practicing yoga, and in fact I even contacted Ellen that, when are the classes being offered at St. Kitts, because that's something I want to do, not just because I know the value of it, and then knowing how my personal life has become crazy, and I think that's a way to meditate and kind of start relaxation exercise. So I want to go that for personal health also, because that influences the health of people around me. So I want to do yoga anyway. So that's my aspiration. And then this collection kind of gave me that vibe of, how it's like kind of they're connected. And so then I call this vinyasa, which is a pose, it's a yoga pose. And then within vinyasa, then I started naming all the pieces, and then some pieces were not, they don't have the yoga related names, but they have some other, for example, the outside piece is known as corporate denim, because it's very corporate, it's a very professional dress, but it's denim. So it's kind of like that's the name came from there. But some of the pieces came, so for example, this one is like, this dress to me feels like, like I've tried to feel what it feels and then what it means to me, and then I started looking for the word that connects with yoga, and kind of trying to find it. So every piece did not fit everything. So this piece is like trill, which basically tells about the true and the real woman, empowered woman, and then the dress is about like your superwoman cape. Like it's like so that's the shalaba is like that kind of that winged cape. So that's how I started defining those names. I call the suit as guru because that suit is the skirt and the jacket. So it's like a power suit for me. It's all organic fabric. So for me it was like, if you are the mentor, so guru means like, your teacher or your guru, so the mentor guru. So that's how I started connecting with what the vibe the dress was giving and how it was connecting to a term. If I can find in the yoga sequences or somewhere related to the, poses related to that. If not, then there are some other than that particular dress, which is sitting on the bench here, is called perfect patola, because that's like, that I fall in love with that term, because it's like a term for a beautiful girl in one of the languages. So I thought like, wearing that dress would, make me feel,
Yeah.
So that's how, does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
Other questions? Patty?
I think I've gotten an understanding. The fabrics that are on the wall, are these fabrics that you actually purchased with the assumption you were going to use, or because they showed specific techniques? I mean, for instance, this embroidered one back here is so fabulous, but you didn't embroider that
No, I
yourself.
didn't.
Okay.
So those are purchased. So those fabrics were purchased in a way to kind of pick out some key work from India and also represent that, and then how eventually, like I have these pieces also which are not in the back panels, and then some of it, then how it cohesively got into my collection as an inspiration. But then when I was asked by the Historical Society to do the show, they also asked me if you can curate some fabrics. So that's where I went shopping something which I was not going to use in my collection, but I wanted to represent the best of what can make into the global fashion, and so that's how those fabrics came into those panels. So those are purchased, and those are just the curated pieces. But the embroidery on the garments, except for this one, I've all done by hand. So this one was kind of repurposed from my collection, my fabric. So but it's artisan made. It's a handmade. It's not a machine embroidery.
If you have a chance, one thing that Anu worked really hard to do was sort of connecting the inspirations provided by the panels to the actual works that she made. So each of the labels does a really nice job, I think, of tying back the region where the fabric came from or the particular stitch that Anu used, and ties those back to specific pieces in the shows. And you start to see some really wonderful both aesthetic and technical relationships between these samples on the walls and parts of her collections. So if you have time to read it, that will connect those two a little more strongly too, I think. No question?
Yeah, what is the most common fiber in all of the garments, and is there a reason that is the most common?
Great question. So I would say the cotton and the silk are pretty much evenly distributed because all the saris that I've used are silk and all the organic is pretty much cotton, like organic denim. This one's cotton. This one has linen in it, linen and cotton mix. Yeah, and then all others are cotton. So I would say they are fairly represented, both of them, and all are natural fibers. And cotton is, as I said, organic, and the silk is repurposed. So they both have their sustainability component of either reusing, doing, and or they are already prepared. In a global organic standard is the highest standard you can get for fabrics. So it meets the social as well as environmental responsibility piece of it. So how it's produced and how it's made, it has 50 pieces, and it's a difficult standard to get. In US there are only 3 suppliers, 3 manufacturers who have that certification.
So when you mean social and
And
so
environmental.
like fair wages?
Everything.
Okay.
And the conditions of the, what they are inhaling, the people who are working in the farms, so what kind of air they are breathing, what kind of water quality. So it covers everything. And India is the biggest supplier of organic cotton to the world.
So I'm curious about care for these garments. And so I would be terrified to think about trying to clean them. So how do you think about that aspect as you're designing them and then make recommendations for sustainable, because I know dry cleaning is
Yeah, it's not
problematic.
problematic.
And so how do you think about that piece of it?
Okay, so my biggest take is that one is that something like this is like very special, right? So you're not going to, so my first goal is don't get dirty. So that's my first goal, like.
That was my problem.
So then I'm more careful then. And then, so some of these, you can hand wash them. So hand wash by using minimum, so the pH neutral soap, and then using minimum manipulation by hand, you can hand wash them. And then hang dry them, or some need drying laying flat, but most of these are pretty woven, so that you should be able to hang them without trying to put any weight on them. So you may want to drip dry and make sure that there's not extra water to pull them down. So, and then if you want to go dry cleaning, there are some dry cleaners that are green dry cleaners, but a lot of times dry cleaners, so some of these fabrics from India, they don't have the standard that you find here in clothes, so the colors can come out even in the dry cleaning process. So you have to be very, very careful when you do that. So a lot of time when I'm designing, if I'm designing for like say that professional wear, so the epaulets on that jacket are removable, you can just take them off. And then the rest you can hand wash it and I've tried not to use any fusible interfacing or anything that can go bad. So it's all cotton go in and then you can, wash it. So I think that's where I am, Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I always think about that piece of it.
Yeah. And then we also do like for a lot of like wools and silks, we also talk about dew cleaning. So if you hang them out in your porch or something, so then they, all odors and things can. So dew cleaning is another method of, if it doesn't have any stain, then dew cleaning is something that I recommend. And also if there's a stain, then try to do just a spot clean or something, not just that you don't need to take a dry cleaner just because you wore it for a few hours here and there. Yeah. There's some other questions here.
Okay, so I noticed that there's like a lot of different mixes of different types of textiles in a lot of the garments. How hard was it, or how was it to mix them together?
They're all very friendly because it's cotton and silk, so the problem comes when you have synthetics. I think to try to mix synthetics with sculpt, so putting them together and sewing them together was a piece of cake because it's just, they are natural fibers and they are very friendly to sewing. But if you have polyesters, those are the harder ones. And if you're trying to sew polyester to cotton, that's another hard one. But you have to again make sure that everything is pre-shrunk and pre-treated before you put them together. So you already do what you need to do, so steaming or pressing or depending on the type of fabric and or pre-washing. So for example, the denim, like when I got the denim, I was like, all dye was coming on my hand and I didn't even realize that that's how they sell the denim. If you're buying from the manufacturer, so the dye was just, I said, this is going to ruin everything. So I had to run it 2 cycles of washing before I could actually use it and to make my garment. So I think otherwise their natural fibers are very easy to work with.
So when it comes to your sourcing, you obviously look for ethically made products because of your values and sustainability. sustainability. Is the shift towards sustainable fashion only will it be driven by demand? Meaning changing the perspectives of consumers and making sure that they're conscious of what they're purchasing? Or is there a way to shift it on the supply side as well? Like, are there movements which advocate for the ethical, do you
Yes,
understand what
I do
mean?
understand your question. That's a great question. So I think with sustainability or anything like that, it has to be every stakeholder has to be engaged in the process. So I think demand is definitely important, and you can see that that's happening nowadays. But at the other end, the supply and also the companies are realizing that this is important. And I think it's also still coming from the demand from the consumer. The consumers are asking questions, and that's where companies are thinking to it. So if you go on any company's website now, you will see everyone has a CSR, right? They have a link to their CSR. Some are doing more, some are not doing as much, but everyone is doing something about social responsibility. And many of the apparel manufacturers are doing a lot of work on environmental responsibility. In fact, there's a Sustainable Apparel Coalition. So that's a coalition of, I think it represents about 70% of the industry. That the people are part of that coalition, and they are trying to make changes within their either sourcing their own fabrics or manufacturing within the system. They're trying to make changes so that they are more sustainable. Whether you talk of H&M, whether you talk of Nike, so all these companies are trying to have less and less impact on from both perspectives, from social as well as environmental perspective. And I just recently read, it was today or yesterday, that they've come to H&M would be sourcing the cotton that's either it's organic or it's better cotton by 2020. All their cotton will be like that. So they are taking those pledges which they'll have to research and do a lot of things to get there, but they are doing it. So I think it's coming from the supply side also.
Do you think that their actions are genuine?
Some of them are. Some of them are definitely greenwashing. So it's kind of like that. You have to research more and see what they're doing. Is it really making any, But then if they're going to change all their cotton, but you'll still might find situations where their supplier, they don't even know who the supplier is, because the complex is so, like the textile complex is very complicated. So you might find something that was sourced unethically and they didn't even know, and it made into their stores, and they have gotten into trouble for that in the past. So those things can happen. But if you're trying to address at different touch points and you're trying to, so I feel that as long as you're trying to make an effort in the right direction, nobody's perfect, I should say. So I think it's happening, and it's coming from consumers for sure. And it started with a more like organic food movement, and it's kind of more the cultural shift of us as consumers is changing. We went into fast fashion, and now we're trying to slow it down and slowing the consumption. So I think it is happening. So at least I'm very optimistic about it.
Yeah, kind of connected to the same issue. I was wondering, you're coming at it from an academic point of view and location, and you're thinking about what's happening in the corporate world or in industry. So how do you see those two relating? And do you feel you're sort of a vanguard, or how do you see your role, and where do you think it's kind of going?
That's a difficult question, Jennifer. Okay. So I think from the academic perspective, about 10 years ago, the academia wasn't thinking about it as much. So I think 2006-07 were the conferences where the academic conferences where we started talking about these things, and there was just like roundtable discussions and things like that. And now we are at a point where they are like, I think there are tracks and tracks of sustainability related research teaching that's going on, and these are the people who are being fed to the industry. So all over the country, the graduates are going into the industry, and a lot of employers are now seeking those people who have that background. So academia started with the industry, and I think right now the academia is kind of a little ahead in some areas from industry, but in some areas industry is ahead too. They are doing the research, and there are more specialized conferences and things like where people are sharing ideas, and a lot of it is about like sharing that knowledge. I think that's very important in sustainability. So that's happening in a lot of different forums. So it's kind of, does that answer somewhat your question? And also, even looking at the local company like Target, I think 3 years ago, 4 years ago, they were still thinking about it, and now it's kind of, you can see some of their kids wear has recycled polyester in the pants, and their labels are all made from the recycle. You can find, in fact, Tex, which is a European standard for, or textile, which is which has environmental standard met. You can buy those towels at Target. So they are doing a lot of things. My design students who have been working there since 2007, now asking the questions from their supplier. What is the sustainability of the yarns and the fabrics that you're supplying me? So, and they are developing denim washes which are using less water and less energy. So things are happening. And again, to change the whole industry, it's really difficult. But as we progress, I think we are getting there.
What are the economic ramifications of that change? Because we've come to a point, right, where fast produced but also very inexpensive, right? And so, do you know what I mean? Because I'm assuming sort of like organic food, organic fabrics probably cost more.
Right. So the organic food or organic materials, they all have limitations because you cannot produce something organically which is unlimited, so it kind of has to tie in with the overconsumption that we are so used to. So if we want to consume at the same pace, then you can't even produce that much organic because the yield of the field and everything is lower as compared to your regular, where you are feeding all kinds of chemicals, then the yields of the crops are better. So from that perspective, yeah, organic is expensive, but it is also it can be from the economic point of view, it can be lower if more consumers ask for it, but not asked to the level that you're still consuming like 10 t-shirts versus 1 t-shirt because you want all that colors and everything. So I think it has to be a balance between where you as a consumer is not consuming so much that where we have to produce and to bring to that price point, so you're paying that money for that which is more quality, more durable, better for the earth, better for you, better for everyone. So that's where the cost has to be absorbed. So I think as a consumer we have to make that choice of having less but having better. So I think it comes to us, and then it's economically viable. But a lot of sustainability strategies which enter into the business realm, like packing the containers to the most efficiency, which earlier they were not thinking like that. They were not thinking the carbon footprint impact of, we are going to ship this good, so half of the container is empty and is going because it has to get there to the next, for the supply chain to go. For example, say Target is importing something from India, they would just bring the half container because they need it right now. But now they're thinking more efficiently, and so it's actually saving money to a lot of companies by doing that. So by thinking about how to use, by thinking about your usage as a consumer in the industry, I think that has reduced the cost implication there. And that can then kind of, so their cost of operation has reduced, so that can actually translate into the better, cheaper. So I think, I don't have the greatest answer or the solution.
No, but that's it.
But
Any other questions for Ani?
Yeah, I was wondering if you do, well, it's kind of a two-part question. Do you do both-size fashions at all? And also, do you do menswear?
so I have really not done much of menswear. I remember I did in my in my grad school I did make a shirt for my dad. That was my only menswear which I made because, but then we, in our class, like if a student wants to do menswear, so we do help them, although we definitely lack that expertise. I mean, at least I lack that expertise. But, with the textbooks and with other resources and have that technical reading skill to make sure that what I'm reading and what I'm translating into the skill, so I'm able to do that. And then as far as plus size, again, if it's a customized, I can do any size, it depends, it will fit to the person. So customization, so that would be, because these are not designed in a way to be mass produced or anything.
Yeah.
So if it's one-on-one, taking your measurements is based on what will look right at the person and what that person would want as a customer. And again, we have taught that in our class. So 1 year we did plus size project for our students. It was very challenging because the fitting in plus size is very difficult. So then we realized that it's not an appropriate level for an undergrad class student to work on that unless they want to do it. So if their own model was plus size and that's what they want to focus on, they can do it, and students have done it. But when we did it as a team project, it was really challenging for the team to do that because there was a lot of fitting issues. But yeah, definitely, as long as the model is willing to let the measurements come from multiple fittings, it requires fittings, it's totally, I'm more than happy to work on it.
I actually have a question about sort of like that customization of clothing. I know in a lot of other countries, the new clothes that people get are actually have been tailored. They buy the fabric and then it gets tailored for them in the style that they wanted. Here in America, we go to the store and they look on the rack and say, oh, that's cute. We don't play a huge hand in the making of our clothes.
Right.
Do you ever see that sort of personalization, that customization working in Western society? I know it happens for like celebrities and people with money who need to wear like extravagant things. But for like an average person in the Western world, do you ever see that being possible or desirable?
Based
It's a loaded question.
yeah, I'm trying to think so there have been a lot of movements like DIY movements where you do things yourself, so there could be some customization, and so the retail industry is kind of suffering right now because people are shopping online, or so there's a lot of change happening in the society right now. So I don't know if it's going to be possible or not, but looking at for example, Nordstrom recently opened a store in California, where you just go there and it's more like custom, you're not picking and you're just trying that and then it will be made to your size and things like that. So those things are happening, but several years ago there was technology where they'll scan your body and then make products to your size. That was not successful because I think a lot of customers did not want to be scanned, or I don't know what was the failure issue with that was. So I don't know. So that's a hard question, and then with the technology, I don't know, things might change. But there's definitely a market for customization, so the people who like unique stuff and they don't want anything to be I feel sometimes I do have things which are from the store, but if I see someone else, I feel very uncomfortable, someone else has the same thing what I have, so I want something more individualistic. And then the people who would have fitting issues, because with mass customization, fitting is a big problem, with the industry, that they cannot make to the actual body. They make to the standard body, and no one is standard. So you have to kind of find your right fit and right everything. So a lot of people buy ready to wear and then they get it altered a little bit because to fit to their body, especially if it's a special occasion garment or something like that. So, and with the way we are living right now, with the kind of fast-paced, and I think it will be a choice of the consumer, whoever wants to do it. So there are options available. I don't know how else to answer your question. It's
Okay.
Anybody else can add to that? Yes.
I can actually add to that.
Yes.
So I have a daughter who I'm very proud that she's a conscientious shopper. So she only wants to buy things from, used clothing from vintage stores or from, Goodwill. And she finds that piece that she loves, and often it doesn't quite fit. So we found a seamstress in the neighborhood that is quite affordable. So then, the piece ends up being what we would spend in the store, but it's unique. We're supporting a local seamstress. It's, so there are ways I think you can, it takes time, right? It's not something she's gonna buy and then wear tomorrow. But she feels good.
I think that's I share that feeling that, once you wear something that you can make a personal connection with it, and in different ways. You just feel so good within yourself wearing that piece, and it just gives you so much pride about your own self, and it gives you peace and pride. I think you get that feeling. And then another thing I've seen has become popular is like a lot of rental clothing that has become, the clothing swaps have become popular, the rental, so, and that's the reason I think retail industry is suffering now because people are not shopping there anymore. So they are either renting out and doing other things. So even a place like Target is rethinking their strategy, how they can engage the customer and giving them personal advice on what will look good, what fiber would work well for this activity and that activity. So they're changing their whole model of how they want to have a customer interface, and interact at the store level to engage the customer because everyone's losing that consumer that was just mindlessly thinking, and now I think the millennials or even beyond millennials, what's the next generation? So those are thinking differently. But again, my daughter doesn't fall there yet.
So, just a follow-up to that then, when you're with your fashion students, what are like the top 5 recommendations you give them to start living a more fashionably sustainable life?
Okay, students, please you answer that question. Anyone? Liv, you want to say something?
Well, like, it doesn't have to do with like, it just made me think more of, like for example, I have a daughter, and so I'll get her clothes secondhand, especially since she's growing at such a like rapid pace. And so that was something I was already doing, but being now in the program, it just like reinforced this is really good to do this. Or then even just like example in the classroom, how Dr. knew is sustainable is our first research paper, we don't have to print out our paper, we can just do it in the Dropbox. So I feel like that's sustainable by not using all this paper and resources, just do electronically that way. So that's one way I feel like
That's
it's
her
sustainable.
worldview, right?
Yeah.
And then I think, Leticia, you also talked about it, like, when you were doing your own design.
Yeah.
I didn't influence you on that design, so.
So basically, I made my design out of used jeans that I didn't like anymore. And I kind of took that from actually Trudy's class, where we waste not at all. Because we pay for fabric. So, I don't know, that's kind of something that's taught a lot. Just don't waste. And what you do throw away, you recycle.
So again, I think, so going back to the question, it's like, strategies for designers are trying to repurpose or, see what you have and don't try to, I need to design this clothes and I will go and shop now. So try to buy after you've seen everything what you have is not going to work for you, because I don't want to compromise your design vision. It's creativity driven. You'll find use of that fabric somewhere, somehow. So, but first look into what you can recreate, reuse. So see that, and then again, doing the minimum waste. So doing minimum waste is also beneficial because then you're saving fabric, which is almost cost 50% of the cost goes into your garment is fabric. So it's also good for the industry, if you're trying to cut it in a way that nothing is getting wasted. You're using all of it and you're not throwing away some scraps into the garbage and then that's going into the landfill. So trying to not do any waste. Try to create designs that everyone won't buy in because they want like certain styles, they look good on certain bodies. That's okay. It's totally your design. Because I feel that by not doing certain strategies, that doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. It's your personal choices. So I think nobody should feel guilty about, oh, I don't do this and I don't do that, because it's your value system. You build it the way you want. And today you might have these values, tomorrow you might have different values. So as you learn, as your lived experience, you can, so never feel guilty about what you do, but if you like that value and you want to think about it, you should think about it and then see how you want to live that value eventually. So, again, creating designs that can fit multiple bodies or have classic design that doesn't go out of fashion pretty soon, and then you're thinking I'm looking outdated. So try to do something, build quality. So that's like a huge piece, like building quality into design. So now they're not falling apart or ripping apart pretty soon. So again, choosing from the right quality material to construction quality, everything. So build quality into that. And then from the consumer side or the merchandiser side, again, I lost my chain of thought. Like what I was thinking. So again, picking up clothes that are which have longevity built in them. which, so which have some social purpose or something, like picking up from retailers that you kind of connect with their value system. So I think a lot of our decisions, personal decisions, if we really think through, are value driven of the values that are important to us as an individual. So if you pick this as your personal value, I think that's where you can make those decisions. And I think one exercise, I was at the Saturday, the TRW salon, and one activity the students had to do was writing what did you do and how it connects to your values. I thought that was such a good activity to think about. A lot of things we do, we don't even think that that's kind of connecting to our value as an individual. So I think that's where, comes from. So does that kind of answer your question?
Sorry, I've asked a lot of
No,
questions.
that's totally fine.
No, it's great, it's great. Well, we should probably wrap up, however, but if you have, you can stick around for a few more minutes. If anyone has individual questions they want to talk to Anu about, feel free to do so, and come back and see the show one more time, and it's all put back together after our event today. But thank you so much for coming and asking such thoughtful questions. You've got great students, I think we can all agree about that. But thanks again, Anu, and thanks everyone for coming.